So I have been in California since 1998. I worked for Philips at the time when I graduated from the University of Technology in Vienna, and then started with Philips in Austria, and they eventually sent me to Silicon Valley, which I was ecstatic about because most of my colleagues went to Hungary or Poland, and so I felt very lucky that I got a chance to go to the I think they called it at the time the Multimedia Center in Palo Alto. So I was like, whatever, I'm going to go there. I'm going to see whatever that's going to hold for me. And so I'm still here today. I did a lot of, so as soon as I got to California, I was always exposed to new ventures of some sort. Inside Philips, actually the office we had in Palo Alto was really meant to be an exploration of how Silicon Valley works and what Philips could possibly do to kind of benefit from that and create some kind of a innovative spirit and some kind of startup incubation there. And for the longest time, I worked in a group that supported a lot of entrepreneurial people in the company in figuring out their path. A lot of my work was always around the operations side of it. Philips obviously is a product company, not necessarily a software company. So we were always making something that you can touch. And I have, throughout my entire career, I've always been in companies that make something. I've not done software or anything like that because it appeals more to me to make something physical. I mean, my undergraduate was actually mechanical engineering, so that might explain that. So we helped new ventures, if you want, in the company to find their way, to find out whether there is a way in the first place, because many ideas at the end of the day are not really going anywhere, but some do. And the ones that did, we tried to help them to figure out how to do it. How would you build a product like the one that you're thinking about? How do you get it into the market? How do you distribute it and all that kind of stuff? And I ended up then working with one of those groups that really became bigger, more intensively, and then kind of took a more traditional role in one of those teams. And then it was around 2000, so the whole first internet crash, happened. Lots of people changed their approach to Silicon Valley and what to do and so on and so forth. And Philips figured, we want to do something different. And at the same time, a company called Flextronics reached out to me. Now, it might sound maybe strange in the first thing, but the reason why they reached out to me is because the company had acquired Philips factories in Austria, where lots of my old colleagues, bosses, friends worked. And so as they were trying to figure out how to find their new way in inside Flextronics, they reached out to me and said, don't you want to come and join us and help? So I went back to Europe for a few years to do that. But honestly, first of all, I didn't do it for a really long time because I didn't want to lose my green card here. With a green card, you can only be outside of the country for so long. And then secondly, I had, even though it was only, I think my first time here was probably about 4 or 5 years or so, I really got attached to the way of working here and the environment in companies. It was very different from I mean, I actually didn't work a whole lot of time in Austria to begin with, but it was just a different spirit, something that appealed to me and inspired me personally. I felt there's an energy, in the area and the way how people look at opportunities. And really, like Marcus just said earlier when I joined the call here, the constant curiosity whether things are really done in the one and only way there is, or if there is maybe something else, or and as much as elusive as it might seem, why don't we give it a shot and go for it? Right? There's there's a sense of, everything can be done if you just, if you just really want it. And somehow that appealed to me personally, just as an energy. And so I decided that I wanted to come back. I quit my job in Europe and moved myself back here, and started to look for, I really wanted to work in a startup. So I figured, let's find one. And I ended up working in LED lighting. And that was back in 2008, when LED lighting was really in the very early days. And there were lots of technical challenges with making white light from LEDs, because the LED itself doesn't produce white light. White light is a mix of different wavelengths, and is a spectrum, so to say. So an LED only produces one wavelength because it's a semiconductor material. So usually it is some shade of blue that is used because of the energy density, and then you need to convert that into white. And there's many ways how to do that, and it has, all of them have some challenge. I mean, over time now, 12 years later, we all have probably LED light bulbs at home that don't cost that much money anymore, and it's just normal. But at the beginning, it was very difficult to create a consistent white light and keep it white over time and all that stuff. So it was very interesting because the company I worked for was working on overcoming some of these difficulties. And I joined them again to make the product that they had come up with, right? So like I said earlier, the process of making something has always been a theme for me. So I ended up building up a supply chain for the product that we developed. And we built up a factory in Malaysia. We had vendors all over the world, customers all over the world. And so we ventured out to convince, and it was interesting. I came from a large company, first Philips, then Flextronics, so very large companies that have obviously a lot of appeal, to the supply base, because people expect big businesses and all that. And it was an interesting experience for me to go into a no-name company. When I joined, we were 10 people. And all of a sudden you go and you want to find a contract manufacturer to build your products, and everybody goes like, I don't know you. I don't know. How do I know that you are going to be around tomorrow? So I had to change from, being like, coming from the, backed up the big Flextronics or Philips. I had to basically have a sales pitch when I wanted to give somebody my business. And it was a humbling experience that I really appreciate all the way until today, because you should never lose the sight of, that people want to understand what it is that actually you have to offer, right? It might sound great to you yourself, but you have to be able to explain it to others. You have to be able to excite, inspire others to actually do with you what you need them to do. And especially in a startup environment where, nobody really knows where you're going, you need to make sure that their mission is known, and that the excitement of that mission, gets conveyed to everybody who participates. And so it was really interesting to figure out how we had to buy LEDs from large companies, and our volume was basically a drop in the bucket, right? It's whether we buy or don't buy, it doesn't matter to them, but it mattered a lot to us to get exactly the right products. So it was a very interesting experience to go through all of that and build up the operation that we then had. And then about 4 years into that, Flextronics knocked on my door again, and I was just about ready to do something else. And it, they couldn't tell me, they couldn't really tell me what it was, because it was a highly secretive project. But somehow they were able to get me very excited and interested in that. So I ended up joining back into Flextronics, and found out that we are working on an Apple product. And I don't know how well you all know the Apple portfolio, but Apple made for the last 7 years, up until sometime last year, I think, They made a high-end desktop computer called the Mac Pro, which is like a cylindrical, piece of art, which replaced a tower-style computer that basically takes up half the space under your desk. And so they wanted to completely change how this product looks like, how it performs, how it's perceived, and all that. And they wanted to do it in the US for all kinds of reasons. So we won that product, and the Flextronics won it just before I joined, and then they brought me in to make it happen. And so we started out, and this one is also one of those experiences, that I wouldn't miss in my life. We started out co-developing the product with Apple. We used a lot of different sites in the Bay Area to make it happen. From printed circuit board assembly, which is kind of like the basic bread and butter business of a company like Flextronics. But then we also had to make that housing, and the housing, like any surface of Apple that you touch, has been designed very, very carefully. The company takes a lot of pride in the experience that you have with the product, the way how it looks, the way how it feels, the way how everything fits together is extremely important to them. Everybody who has ever used an Apple product can probably relate to that. And there is absolutely no compromises that they would accept, right? So we had to make an aluminum housing, cylindrical, with a mirror polished surface. Now, aluminum, for those of you who are not material scientists, aluminum is a very soft metal. To keep a polished surface protected throughout the manufacturing process is not easy, because it doesn't take much for a little thing. And the smallest little thing would immediately be a reject. This is absolutely impossible. So we had to invent, first of all, just for you to appreciate what it meant for Flextronics. So we had not made something like that anywhere in the world in the company. We did not have precision machining capability in the company at all. So we had to, first of all, get people into the company that know how to do that. And then people who know how to do that on aluminum, which is an additional challenge. If it was a steel housing, it would have been a lot easier, but it's not. So we had to make this aluminum housing. We had to polish it. There was no polishing process available in the market that would do what Apple wanted. The type of shine that they wanted, the depth of the polishing. The hearsay story that still amuses me today is that they had a housing. So we've machined 5 housings, and we gave them to them raw machined, and then they sent it to somebody in Taiwan, and they did in some shop somewhere, they did some hand polishing on this until it was shiny enough, and they sent it to Johnny Ive, put it on his desk, and he said, this one yes, this one no, this one no, this one yes, this one yes. So here, these 3 are acceptable, these 2 are not. And then they gave those 2 to us, 3 to us, and said, we want you to do this. And we're like, oh, okay. So somebody said, in the shop somewhere, 8 hours hand polishing this thing. Obviously, we cannot do that for 100,000 products. Okay. So we went and had to invent the process to do that. It was very intriguing, and all that, of course, is on a timeline that is, close to impossible, right? So it was very interesting the point I'm trying to make is to be faced with challenges that seem impossible, right, by a very highly demanding customer, that is at the same time, though, also here to make it happen with you, and firmly believes that it can be done, creates an enormous amount of inspiration and motivation in the team, right? I mean, when we first were confronted with the challenge, there was a moment of, where your heart sinks into your stomach, and you go like, I don't even know what to say right now, right? But as soon as you catch your breath and you realize that it's serious and we'll figure this out, it creates an enormous amount of energy to actually really go and do it. And we did. We ended up making many of these products in a process that that is unbelievable. I mean, unfortunately, I can't show a lot of pictures and things because you know, a lot of it is still, you know, under seal. But it was an amazing facility that we built up to do that, and to work through all this with this customer was very interesting. The thing that I want to maybe point out a little bit more, because it kind of leads then to what I do today. One of the things that we wanted to figure out is, you know, obviously, you know, if you're based in Silicon Valley, you kind of almost have to do something with Apple and Google and, you know, those kind of companies, because they are driving a lot of innovation. They are obviously very large businesses, and you want to figure out how to get a little piece of that pie, right? And you also don't want to take too much, because that could be a problem. So you want to figure out how to get some of that. And so for Flex, it was always very clear that we do not want to be a large supplier to, let's say, make a phone for them, or a tablet, or a computer, or anything like that, or even a mainstream computer, because you would inevitably be one of two or three. There would be huge amounts of competitive pressure, and it's just, you know, it just erodes the possibility to make any margin, because it's just the way how they drive their business. It's just brutal. So we didn't want to do that. So we knew that we had to do a product that's an actual consumer product. And so this one ended up being perfect for us, because it's a very small piece of the Apple business. It's not in volume or revenue. It's nothing really relevant for them, but it's important for a specific base of their users. And so we could actually make this product single sourced in one site in the US throughout the entire life of the product, which gave us a lot of leverage, even against a huge company like Apple, to demand a certain margin that made the business interesting for us. And once we had that anchor business, we started to create our network inside the company and look for other opportunities where we could do something special, something different, right? What are the things where they are maybe struggling and need some help, and it's something that we have. So most of my time was really spent on digging into the different opportunities inside Apple and figure out if there's something where Flex has specific knowledge, or, you know, a capacity, something that we could do here in Silicon Valley, or somewhere else in a place in the world where they don't really have a lot of big vendors set up, so that we could be that special vendor and then make a business that makes sense for us. And we were very successful over the entire time. I ran the Apple business for about 7 years, and it was very profitable all the time, despite everybody's predictions. Everybody in the company told us, you guys are crazy, you should never do this, it's going to be a drain of money, we'll lose money. Yeah, we didn't. We made a lot of money because we were very, very careful. And the biggest challenge for me was that I had to constantly remind people to be patient, because there's nothing you can do. You cannot rush Apple to do something, right? Once they want something, the rush is on, the pressure is on, the timelines are unrealistic and everything. But all the way until they make that decision, there's nothing you can't do anything about it. It's just it takes its course. But once you have it, you got it. And so lots of people got impatient many times with our progress. But at the end of the day, when we looked back, it always turned out to be the right call. Don't take something quickly just to get some revenue. You gotta find the right thing. And so fast forward now to today, and I'm just this is my 5th week in a completely new space, and so I'm now in a company that's called Zymergen. It's a biotech company that we do extremely cool stuff. So we have how should I explain? So the core technology that we have is an ability to design molecules that have certain characteristics, and then we can make those molecules through biological processes. Typically, it's a fermentation process. So we can engineer. So we have a very large team of bioengineers, scientists, that can engineer microbes to make a molecule of a certain characteristic. And I mean, you can think of, as an example, I think it's one that's even on our website. You know, if you think of mussels in the ocean, right? So mussels are glue themselves to the ocean, to the rocks on the shore, so that they will never get knocked off by the forces of the ocean, regardless of what storm comes by, right? A mussel doesn't just fall off the rock. They are glued there. But the glue that they use and produce themselves is a very potent glue, and it's probably one of the strongest glues in the world, on the earth, right? And you know, people have tried to replicate that glue chemically, but it's a very complex molecule, and it's just exceedingly expensive, if not impossible, to replicate it through chemical synthesis. However, we can create that molecule through a biological process if we can just define a microbe that would produce that molecule, right, in a fermentation type of process. And so that's kind of like the philosophy that we are following. We say, well, we can make products that have specific characteristics, and we can produce them through a biological process, so they become essentially natural products. It's not going to be a toxic chemical material. It's a material that you know, some organism produces, and then, you know, typically those would be monomers that we then combine with other molecules to make products. So for example, right now we have a film that is used in display production. It's going to be the cover window of, you know, for laptops or phones or whatever. And we can make that with characteristics that far exceed what a chemical film can do at a fraction of the cost, because it's basically all you need is sugar and a certain you know, environment. And the microbe is just going to produce the molecule, and then you clean it out and you do a polymerization process and you make a film out of it, right? So it is an extremely simple process, very elegant process that can create very powerful products. So the company has asked me to join because, you know, many biotech companies make some kind of a pharmaceutical product. Most people that think of biotech think of companies like, I don't know, Amgen, Genentech, or those kind of companies that make something in the field of pharmaceuticals. We make materials for everyday life in a biotech way, right? Because we believe that you know, if we want to really make a dent into our dependency on oil, then, you know, all the electrical cars and all that is all great. But the only half of the value that oil creates comes from fuel. The other half comes from petrochemical products. And so if we don't do something about all these products, then we still have a lot of dependency on oil, you know, through, you know, things we all touch every single day. And if we can create more of these products in a biotech way, we could start making a dent into that part of the petrochemical dependency as well. So that kind of mission kind of appealed to me, inspired me, and then, you know, talking to you know, lots of people in the company really convinced me very quickly this is a really interesting opportunity. And, you know, in particular now, since we are trying to make products that feed into the electronics, consumer electronics industry, because we want, you know, we want to be in products that have fast cycles, so we get into products quickly, and that have a far reach, right? So we can do something fast. So that was interesting for me. And, you know, since I spent the last 26 years now in electronics, I felt like this is going to be a really interesting endeavor. And you know, it was really interesting to listen, Marcus, what you said earlier when I joined, that, you know, that curiosity and asking questions that might seem stupid. There is no such thing, right? I mean, and you can never assume anything. I mean, I come to this company, there is 600, 700 PhDs, you know, from MIT, Harvard, Stanford, you know, you name the top schools, and the top students, the top scientists from these schools, they're all in our lab somewhere. The smartest people on earth, right? And then you ask a few very fundamental questions, and everyone goes like, I didn't think of that. Right. So you really realize very quickly that the important thing is to have a lot of different views and allow those views and allow those conversations, because you might think that they have it all figured out and they have not, right? I mean, if I look at my company now, they have for the last 5 years, they have really, perfected that capability of generating novel molecules, right? But it has been very difficult for them to figure out, well, to what end, right? I mean, it's, yeah.
You know, as you're talking, Hans,
Mm-hmm.
you've sort of got me thinking a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been thinking about what are all the materials which I use every day, which are also existent within the world around us through creatures. And I'm thinking of, there are creatures which create light, creatures which create heat, creatures which create electricity, you know, electric eels and glowworms and all that stuff, creatures which create resistant materials and flexible materials. So when you start looking at the bioengineering of materials, there is nothing off limits.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, shit, that's enormous, isn't it?
Yes.
So we don't have to dig things out of the earth and then try and shape them and heat them and cool them and do stuff. We might be able to not biosynthetically create them.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. And that
So wood.
it's endless. Material. Exactly. The opportunities are completely unrestricted. I mean, we have a project going on, and several other companies are doing that as well. You could also engineer a microbe, for example, that you dump in the ocean, that eats all the plastic on the ocean floor and transforms it into water and, I don't know, nitrogen, whatever it is, right? So there's all these great ideas. If you can engineer that organism accordingly, then you could do all these things, right? And so, but the vastness of the opportunity is also a problem, because now what are you actually going to do, right? So for the last 5 years, they have worked in an agency model where they would basically, make molecules on demand, if you want, right? Somebody says, hey, I need this and that, and they would do it. And now we say, well, but if we really want to grow up and become a company, we need to actually make something, right? And so one of my biggest roles here is to say, well, we need to focus. We need to now focus our collective scientific experience and knowledge, and find out where can we make something that that has impact, and we can do it quickly. We can get into products that have fast cycles, so we can actually really get into that in reasonable time. And at the same time, we need to build ourselves up as a reputable company in that space, right? Because as for example, right, with the films, right? So I mean, there are many companies out there that make films, large companies. I mean, the people who make films today for, iPads and iPhones and laptops and, all these products. I mean, there are companies out there that make millions and millions of square meters of film every year and have been doing it for a long time, have a reputation and are reliable. And, when Apple goes and says, I'm going to need now this and this and this for my next generation iPhone, then they will go to the companies that they can trust, right? So why would they come to Zymergen? So, the challenge that we have is that we need to, first of all, we need to have a product that is so convincing that they go like, well, I need to take a look at that, because this is really outstanding. So first of all, we need to have a product that has the technical characteristics that exceed the ones of a traditional product. And then on top of that, we can say, and it's actually also a bio-made product, right? But it has to be both. If we just make a product that is just as good as any other product, but bio-made, is not going to be sufficient. It's becoming a little bit more of a maybe a decision point, because everybody, focuses on that, especially those big name companies that want to, appear to be green and all that stuff. It has some value for them, but really what they're looking for is that we can generate a material that is superior to what they use today. Because they are not necessarily satisfied with what they have today. It's sufficient, it's good enough, but if it were better, then that would be something, right? So the value really that we have is that we can design these materials in a certain way, but we need to overcome that initial hurdle of people saying, well, who are you? How do I know that you can actually make this in the volume I need? I mean, we can give them a sample and they can see that it actually works. Yes. But then they go like, well, but I need now the 1 million square meters a year. And how do you make that? So the challenge for me is, first of all, to really focus all our resources on the products that really have some kind of, viable path in the market. And then also figure out how we become a company with an operation that is reliable and appeals to companies that really need that security. I mean, you cannot have an Apple phone line down for not even 10 minutes, right? Because the thousands of phones that they lose in those 10 minutes, they would bankrupt you, right? So how to become that company is going to be the interesting challenge. And I decided that that is an interesting
Johannes, how do they go about that process? I mean, is this a blue sky brainstorm with crazy ideas coming out, or is it take what they already know, so you're the new guy in, so you're not caught with their way of thinking, which is implanted in you. So have you been able to just go, well, how do you form a crazy group? That old Apple story of flying the Jolly Roger above the Mac creation unit. Is that the sort of thing which you think is going to enable this to emerge?
Yeah. So we do. So I'm still learning, right? Like I said, this is Wednesday in week 5. So there is still a lot of things that I do not know yet. But yes, we do have an idea creation process where we take people from different disciplines and try to come up with crazy ideas of what we can possibly do, and then figure out how we kind of put all of that into a funnel and say, well, out of the 100 ideas that we have, what is going to be the one that we're going to do right now, right? And some avenues, there's different instigators for those ideas, right? I mean, one is that we do this process, we sit together and say, hey, looking at all the things that we have already done, and obviously there are certain molecules that are more difficult than others to make, right? And you want to find one that's relatively easy to make, so you can get there fast. It doesn't take you 2-3 years to develop the molecule. At the same time, it has to be sufficiently differentiated from what's out there. Otherwise, you don't have a business case. So that is one element of the process. The other one could also be, and we have those examples already, that a customer comes to us and says, hey, I want you to make a bio-based adhesive, for example, right? Because in my products, the adhesives are one of the things that bother me the most in terms of environmental sustainability. I want you to look at adhesives, right? And we might say, okay, well, let me think about what adhesive, because adhesives also is like a very vast, space. So let's just look a little bit at what adhesives could possibly be made with bio-based ingredients, and how does that fit in some of the things that we already have, and then that could be a path as well, right? So we are trying to take any kind of input to determine where we see a path, but at the end of the day, it all has to go through this funnel process where we say, well, is it something that we can make bio-based right away or very quickly? Is it something that goes into fast-turning products so that we can actually sell our material, a year from now rather than 5 years from now, right? And is it something where I can, with the right product, generate a margin that is interesting for us, right? Because, and this is where this connects with my Apple time in Flex, right? I'm trying to find the space where I have something that not many others have, and I can command a certain margin. I don't want to just make another epoxy glue, just more bio, but it's just going to be the same as the other one, and it's going to be super cheap, and it's going to be very difficult to make actual money with it. especially then you compete against the Henkels and all these companies in the world that make, you know, tons and tons of that, and we are just starting up, right? So you have to find carrier products that get you over that first hurdle. And I think, I don't know, I mean, you know, 10 years down the road, I don't know, but I think for the next few years, we need to be much more of a specialty company than the mainstream, right? Because otherwise, I don't think that the value is really going to be there.
This is Niall here. Sorry, I'm still not on video. But another thing that springs to mind there, Johannes, is perhaps with your screening process. I think you mentioned 3 points for your screening approach. Perhaps a fourth one could be, is the opportunity going to provide a very high visibility that will allow you to get to that next stage? So you mentioned, well, awareness is maybe an issue, you know, people don't know who you are. Could this opportunity give you a springboard to that high visibility or higher visibility through word of mouth, through leveraging other
Right. I mean, you could do a highly visible product with a highly visible customer who also agrees to give you some PR, which many of those don't really like, but you maybe you can negotiate something there. But yes, I agree. If you had a product that gives you that exposure and says, hey, we are working with company XYZ on this and this, that would certainly be a value in itself that we would certainly take. Yes, I mean, so the go-to-market strategies, there is several, and that this is one of the ones that we definitely do pursue. But it's one of several. Yeah, I agree.
Fascinating challenge, though. It's I want to wind time forwards by 2 or 3 years and look back and see how it went.
Me too. But I have a lot of faith in the overall mission, and I think that it's actually a good moment for something like that right now. There's enough momentum in that direction. And I've never looked into anything biotech before ever, because I always felt it's like too far away from my roots and my knowledge and everything. So when they approached me and said, hey, we need you because you know the electronics industry, and we need to find, you know, those special places in that whole chain, I thought, that is interesting, and it really connects to what I've done in the past. And then as I started to think more about it, I found that there are clusters of biotech companies in the Bay Area that I didn't realize. Like, for, you know, my company is based in Emeryville, which is just a little bit north of Oakland. And right around us, there's like, I would say within 5 blocks, there's probably 12 biotech companies. Right in that little village, little town of Emeryville. I don't know exactly why. I don't know if it's because of Berkeley being close by or whatever it is, but for some reason, there is this cluster there where, you know, they are not all direct competitors of us. They, you know, some of them make different things. I mean, there are, you know, some of those companies that make this artificial meat and, you know, all that stuff. But it's still all fundamentally using the same concept of bioengineering organisms that then generate materials of some sort that you would otherwise have to, you know, dig out of the earth or whatever. So it's kind of interesting that, you know, sometimes certain technologies create a momentum and create, you know, even geographical clusters where then, you know, a lot of people just congregate to do exactly that, just in different contexts.
I was intrigued by your story, and congratulations to that narrative. And I just got stuck when you shared when you met John Ive with the tower, the Apple Tower. And I'm curious how his way of perfection has impacted your life, your journey. Where I heard so many stories from him when they built Apple Park, where he asked for ridiculous things, like the door that I think it's 4 stories high, and he wants it at the top at the beginning with the same distance between the class. And everyone, 17 companies said this is not possible. And the 18th company said, we'll make it happen. And kind of this persistence towards perfection. I always feel like perfection can be supportive and a problem at the same time, right? Because it makes you slow. But not striving for anything than the best, I cannot imagine that this is not impacting you when you're working with someone like that.
Yeah, for such a long time. Yeah, and I honestly do. You know, I've been in Apple Park only 3 times, I think, but it is actually quite impressive to the what level of detail they went to create exactly what they want. I mean, that door that you mentioned, this like the cafeteria door. I mean, actually, you know, funny thing though, in order to open that, right, it's like a security procedure like nothing else. Like, you know, NASA's letting launching a rocket into the sky or something, because you have to be, everybody has to be clear of this whole thing, you know, and then it takes some time. And if anything interferes, the whole thing shuts down immediately, because this is like this enormous mass of glass and, you know, shaped and moving and whatever. I've not seen it opening, I've seen it open, and it creates an enormous impressive space, right? And like I said, the details of the whole building are just incredible. But back to your question, yes, demanding the impossible all the time and not letting go certainly has an impact. And and my boss at the time, he said all the people that actually stayed with the program all the way to the end are lunatics, because I mean, most people just don't want to deal with that for such a long time. But the ones who do are those who really want to make things like this happen. And it's for me, it is definitely something that does drive me. And I didn't probably see it like that, maybe as clear as I do now. But it is something that, to a certain degree, I think a little bit of that seed you must have, right? And then you just enjoy that and take it as a challenge rather than a threat, right? A lot of people got discouraged and just frustrated with the constant demands. And then others take it as a motivator, right? It's not right or wrong or anything. It's just, it appeals to some people and it doesn't to others. It did appeal to me, and I certainly drive my teams, wherever I work, now in a different way than I did before, because I know that if you use that kind of motivator in the right way, it is an extreme inspiration, and the amount of things that we got done because of that pressure is unbelievable. I mean, we, every once in a while, some of us from back that time, we get together and, we still go like, I can't believe that we did this and this and this. And it is definitely something that shapes you. Yes.
Isn't it the same sort of approach as took place 3,000 years ago when somebody in Egypt said, hey, it'd be nice to have a pyramid?
Exactly.
Well, what the hell's a pyramid? How big? I don't know. Big. Well, how the fuck are we going to make it? I don't know.
And you have to move these huge pieces of rock from 100 kilometers there to over there, and they go like, why would I do that?
With no machines and no internet and no electricity.
And some people said, okay, let's do it. Let's just go get up and do it. And again, back to the very beginning of my story, right? I sensed that spirit when I first came to the Bay Area without fully, grasping it and understanding it. But I got a sense that belief that anything can be done, right? And no question is a wrong question. And that it really made me feel like, well, there's really something here that just appealed to me, right? And it's interesting. I had a short stint in between Flex and Zymergen in another company, and when I left after a very short time, the team was a little bit surprised, and the CEO called me and said, hey, Johannes, I don't know why, we just got going, and we think that we can do a lot of things here together, and but hey, I just want to understand and share some thoughts. And he said, honestly, if you want to do what this new company is doing, then you should just go do it. I would never ever want that. He's the CEO of a very large company, very successful financially as well as career-wise and everything. And he said, look, that just has never been appealing to me. I wanted to do this, what I do today, right? And I've been doing really well. But I respect that you say that is what appeals to you, then you should go do it, right? And I wish you all the luck, and we'll part as friends, and no big deal. And in the end, it was an agonizing decision, because I didn't change jobs like very rapidly in any time in my career. So this was an unusual step for me. But I recognize that I'm looking for this kind of stuff. Right? This is really what gets me going. I mean, I get up early every day, and I'm inspired. I'm excited to go get the next step done today.
So for you, when is good not good enough?
When is good not good enough? So it's an interesting question. I actually had a conversation about it yesterday with somebody. So I think, and we said that a little bit here already, I think perfectionism per se is not necessarily a good thing, because it does not necessarily lead you to anything of value, right? You get stuck. You get stuck kind of spinning your wheels and kind of making something better that doesn't actually need to be better. So I think for me, a lot of things are good enough to get going, but then you want to continue to improve them, right? So for example, for our products right now, right, do we want to have everything perfected in the lab until the last little thing is ironed out, and then we go to our customers? Or do we say, hey, we have a first product here that seems to be really interesting. What do you think? Take a look, make a prototype, try it out, tell me what you think about it, right? So I'm much more in that way of thinking, because you need to interact, with the world. Perfectionism is very isolated kind of thing, right? I mean, if you are an artist and you make a sculpture, that is one thing, right? But if you want to make something that you want to give to the world, you have to interact with the world. So for me, a lot of things are good enough to get going, but then you can never let go of the desire to further improve it, to find the little things that are still not good and can be better, and iterate.
So how do you apply that to your own career journey? Because you've gone through a series of different events in your career as you developed it. And now you're at the stage where the world is open to you. So you're currently in the Bay, but you could be in the Greater Bay Area in China, or you could decide to say, okay, look, we've got 1.25 billion people in India and the manufacturing. So how do you make that decision?
What's good enough for
now
me?
Good or not good enough?
Well, so I think I don't necessarily define a goal per se for me or for my career, right? I don't have like I need to be this or that at this age or this moment. I'm honestly grateful for all the opportunities that I have had, and this one in particular really came very surprising and unexpected, and it was just a matter for me to say, well, do I want to engage and engage in this opportunity and take it or not? And I don't know if there's another one coming, soon or not soon, or I'm very happy where I am today. I have promised myself a long time ago that I will always keep an open mind to anything, but I don't take decisions very lightly either. So I mean, good enough for me. I mean, right now I'm very content here, and I think the mission that we have in front of us is very inspiring for me. So I don't really look for anything else right now, but we'll see. I think, like you said, the world is open in a sense that the more you engage in ventures like this, you open yourself to the world, and you don't know what's coming along next.
That's the perfect closing word. It's like on spot to the hour. And I also want to respect your time. Johannes, thank you so much for this. You said in the beginning, you don't know about the format, you don't know where this is going and what we expect. I think that was an amazing hour together with you, and so inspiring and insightful and humble. And I want to thank you so much.